If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This episode is sponsored by Well Balanced Nutrition and 360 Health.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Oh, I'm so happy to be in the podcast studio today because we're continuing our conversation about an exciting book called Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to, by David Sinclair and Matthew LaPlante. This was a 2019 book, and we talked in the podcast right before this one, sort of some background biology that was pretty technical, but we kind of had to lay the groundwork. And so in this segment, because we probably will do another segment on this book, we just really feel this book is worth attention. One of the things, because the book is split into the past, the present, and the future. And in that past conversation, Sinclair brings up the Horvath clock. And that was something that I said to a friend of mine when I was saying, I'm reading this book, and he's talking about how life can go on forever, because the premise of this book is aging is not a disease, and you might not have to die. That's like old news, according to this author. So as I'm reflecting on that, I studied some biology, and way back, we were told that there was this, like you could take fibroblasts, which are a type of cell, and put them in a petri dish and stimulate them, give them all the nutrients, and they will only divide 17 times or something like that. I can't remember the number, but there was a finite number of cell divisions. Mm-hmm. Well, this guy refers to that work. It's called the Horvath clock, and it measures biological age. And it's this ticking clock that's going on. And what our author is saying is we can adjust that clock. It doesn't have to operate with a finite end.
And that our environment and how we live our life can influence the biological age.
And his evidence for that is that fibroblast study might have worked on small organisms, but there are some giant organisms that live evidently forever, like the bristlestone pine tree, which can be over 4,000 years old. There's a Hydra vulgaris, there's a jellyfish, a giant jellyfish, there's a Greenland shark, and the bowhead whale. Yeah. So there's evidence that things can live a really long time. And so why are we not living a really long time? So there's an idea called gerontogenesis, and it is in the Merck Manual of Geriatrics. There is this idea of geriatrics. I know here in our local Winston-Salem area, we have the Stick Center on Aging, and for a while, at the time, William Hazard and his colleague, whose name is escaping me, wrote the first medical textbook on geriatrics, which was referenced. I mean, it's kind of a new idea to study aging. Mm-hmm. And as we said earlier, the funding for the study of aging is kind of non-existent. The study of diabetes, the study of Alzheimer's, study of heart disease and cancer is got more funding. Now, you went to a school in Indiana, Kristen, and you just said its name?
Yeah, the School of Wellness and Gerontology.
There you go. So there are tell us, what was that? How did that get started? Was it kind of new?
It was. Yeah. It was new, and the focus was on, you could either focus on wellness or gerontology, but they were very much intersected. Mm-hmm. Like, here's how we want to age well, and here's what we can do. And it was fascinating.
Yeah. So talking about aging well right now in the present is what we're going to talk about according to Sinclair's advice. And one of the first things he says is based on the Blue Zones work that was done by Butner. Yes. And he looked at communities around the world that had centenarians in
people
large numbers.
Into their hundreds.
Right. And what did they do to get there? And what we found was
a couple of things they had in common. One of the things that they talk about in this book is that some of them were vegetarian, and the ones who weren't kind of treated meat as more of an occasional or side dish.
Yeah, and
maybe
seafood.
like once a week. Yeah, and some had more seafood, which is anti-inflammatory, so they had that benefit. But a lot of plants in their diet was one of the things.
Exactly, and they laughed.
And they laughed. They
Some
had
of
great
them,
social lives.
yes, some of them drank a little.
Yeah. They had a good community and purpose in their lives.
Right, which is kind of our wellness wheel conversation. We've kind of learned a lot about what does it mean to be comprehensively healthy.
Right.
And how balanced are we in all those areas. So anyway, the blue zones, there was eating less often because the food was not readily available in a lot of these communities. And fasting was a practice that a lot of them did, which brings us to the idea of restricting our intake, restricting calories, going hungry. And we have found there's a lot of biological research in animals that are starved live longer, as long as they are not malnourished.
Yeah, that's a big caveat, right?
Yes.
Fasting, but with adequate nutrition.
Exactly.
And in the blue zones, some of these regions had fasting traditions tied to religion. In the Okinawa community, they had a saying called Hari Hachibu, where they remind themselves to stop eating when they're 80% full at the end of the meal. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that, because if you stop when you're 80% full and you wait a little bit, you're probably 100% full anyway. But I think it was also kind of a common courtesy in their culture to not
be gluttonous
and overeat
selfish.
The meal.
Yeah, I think that has to do with in the base of the brain, the hypothalamus is a pretty interesting area, and there's some key centers there. The satiety center, the thirst center are located there, and it takes a while for blood circulation to get up there. So I think that delay that you just mentioned has probably to do with if you slow down a little bit, then your body signals can catch up. Like you said, you probably are full at 80%, but your signaling system has not gotten that information yet. And that's why slowing down can be helpful. It lets your body get in sync with the blood chemicals that are circulating from your gut. You're absorbing stuff from your gut.
And, restriction, I hate that word because it kind of triggers like diet culture and starving yourself, but that's not really what they're referring to. It's not starvation. But, today we're like snacking in between meals a lot. We're kind of eating all day long. And he's saying, what if it's okay if we go, I always say 12 hours, but I think he pushes it to like 16 hours overnight.
So that's the fasting idea.
Oh, right. And I tie those.
We do, don't we?
Fasting.
Yeah. The number of calories is one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the recommended amount for an adult male, which is something that he also talks about? All of our information is based on a lot of men as subjects, and we're finding out that women behave differently. But anyway, aren't there some guidelines for calorie intake, like 2,000 calories? Or does it depend on your body stature?
It depends on your body stature and age.
And that's why you need some nutritional counseling, because you'll see these recommendations out there. Yeah, 2,000 calories a day is what you need, or 1,500 if you want to lose weight. Well, that may not be true for you.
Right.
Because we're individuals.
Your activity level, the way your body metabolizes, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, and what you're eating. Because 1,500 calories could be, popcorn.
Exactly.
If you put a lot of butter on it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Butter.
Yeah, it is good. See, that's a tough one right there. All right, so we have the idea of if you restrict calories and step away from the table when you're a little bit hungry, that would be a good thing to do today. And you can do it tomorrow and the next day. All right, the second thing you were starting to talk about was intermittent fasting. Like, when do you eat?
Right.
Not how much, but when.
When. So he's suggesting that you have a 16-hour period overnight, and maybe this isn't in the book. Maybe this is some of the other stuff I was listening to.
Just tell us what you think.
Yeah. I think that really depends on the person, whether fasting is right for them. Definitely not right for you if you have any disordered eating history, or if you're pregnant, or if you're a young person, still growing. But for some people, they find it, they don't even like eating breakfast anyway. So it's pretty easy for them to get that 16 hours. And the whole point of that, right, is that autophagy happens in that fasting mode. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that I don't think Sinclair takes into account what you just said about pregnancy and development.
It's all about the male perspective.
Yeah. He slides over there, and at the end of the book, I even had a comment about, you keep talking about your grandfather and your son. What's your wife doing? I want to know what she's doing.
Right.
But anyway, I'll talk about that the next time we get together. I wanted to just throw out, he does do the 16 non-eating, 8-hour eating window idea. And in the blue zones, we saw some groups that, based on their religion, did a different schedule. So they might do the 1 week, a quarter, they don't eat. I mean, they eat less. They really cut it back, maybe drink water and something else for a week. But there's the 5-2 diet, which is 75% fewer calories 2 days a week. Just cut it back. Mm-hmm. That way, he says, you don't deprive yourself of eating the things that you want to eat, because that's kind of like you're saying, you can get into some food obsessions and pathologies pretty quick.
Exactly.
If you start obsessing about, how do I eat and what do I eat and how much do I eat? But the other one is to eat, to stop, and to eat. Skip food a couple of days a week, and then take that 1 week. And I think in the switch, he has a calendar of how you can do it over a year. Eat with the seasons and take a fasting. And it was based on that Mediterranean, I think the Greek monks, that had that kind of a rhythm in their spiritual habits. So if you tend to do that. So there's choices is what we're trying to say. There's not just one way. But the idea of letting your body have some downtime where you're not feeding it and allowing the cells to go into that autophagy surveillance and get rid of the bad stuff and fix the things that are broken is probably a good idea that we should do today. We start thinking about that now.
Absolutely. And I think if the fasting, like the 16 hours, doesn't feel like something you can do, then maybe even just thinking about, how often throughout the day am I eating something, right? Like, am I snacking a lot unnecessarily?
Why am I snacking?
Yeah. Can I just have 3 meals and my body is satisfied? Because he does, I think, talk about, maybe it's his podcast or the book, that, like in children, we're worried about them. We want them to always be fed. But there is benefit in, having that structure. This is breakfast, this is lunch, this is dinner. We're not just going to snack whenever we want. And, in a sense, hunger is not an emergency.
Yeah.
It can wait till the next meal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to grasp, isn't it? At least for me.
Well, my mother,
I don't like being hungry.
My mom was good about that.
Was she?
Oh, yeah, and I would wake up starving. I can still remember waking up starving. I couldn't wait for breakfast. So I was always happy that breakfast was the most important meal of the day.
Yes.
Well, we're not saying that anymore. Are we saying breakfast is the most important meal of the day?
We're not.
Yeah.
A lot of people are skipping
Well, if my mother had heard that, I'd have been in trouble. So, yeah, and we had no snacks. There were no snacks in our house. So it was,
you grew up that way with that structure.
I did, and I thank her for it every day.
Awesome.
Yeah. What about protein restriction? Because the switch talked about that too. And this fella says we eat too much protein, and some of the amino acids, the distribution of them are not appropriate for what we need. Like some of them you need, like the essentials, you get these things in meats, but you get too much of them. I can share my notes. Yes. Yeah.
And I'm still trying to.
That's why I say this book causes you to go, I don't know.
Right. Is this true? Should I? So he says, when we eat animal protein, we have a plethora of amino acids into our body. And we think that is great because then we can build muscle, and we want to have muscle. Muscle is good. Muscle helps us be functional and strong, and it helps our metabolism. But what he says is that when you have this excess amino acid, then the body leaves its survival mode and the response to repair DNA in stress mode is shut down. So if you remember last episode, we talked about our caretaker genes or longevity genes that go around making sure things are shut down in stress mode. So when your body has all of these amino acids, it thinks life is good. I am not stressed, so I can replicate and whatever. But that's when DNA damage can occur. Versus, the author says, plant-based protein is just enough amino acids to, nurture your body, but keep the body under this desirable stress, where your survival instinct to repair DNA stays active. So, a little mind-blowing there.
It is mind-blowing, but I think that's why the evidence for plant eating being healthy is because you're getting protein, but you're not getting it in the excesses that we get in the animal-based diets.
Right.
And there might be something to that. I mean, because in the United States, we don't have very good health. What are we, number 47 out of... I mean, we're low on the health scale in the United States.
Thanks to the standard American diet.
Which is heavy in animal products, right? Yeah, it is sad. I cry every day about that.
I do like the idea of diversifying protein, and I encourage that in my clients, right? Like, don't just get your protein from animals. Plant protein is awesome, and I work with people to incorporate more of that.
And you said age matters, so I know a lot of times people say older people need more protein because we don't absorb it properly.
Absolutely. There's studies
so
to
is
suggest
that true?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so am I old? I mean, is that because I have a disease going on that I can't do that and I need to fix my aging clocks? I mean, it's kind of confounding. All right, so we have calorie restriction, we've got fasting, and we have the protein conversation.
More plant protein versus
just
protein.
How much and what kind. All right, well, then the fourth thing you can do today is exercise, sweat. We know that. How many times have we heard that? Exercise, this is good for us. And now it's, well, what kind of exercise? And how do I do the exercise? So this idea of getting sweaty, that's important. And I can tell you, I have a lot of women friends who say, I don't sweat. I don't like to sweat. I'm not doing it. And it's like, get over that. It's fun. Glow.
That's
glow
right.
with me.
I don't sweat, I glow.
That's right. So get over that. We can do it. And then how often and how long? Well, you need to do it daily. And you don't have to do an hour and a half daily. You can do it in little spurts, like 15 minutes. We found that, an active lifestyle where you're actually pushing yourself. And that sweating thing also comes along with maybe not being able to talk too well. That way.
That's how you know you're pushing yourself a little bit.
That's when okay, I'm going to get a benefit from this. If I don't get there, I'm not going to get much benefit. I'll get some benefit cardiovascularly maybe because that's an aerobic exercise. But once you get into that anaerobic area, and that's why lifting weights can get you there quickly. You can consume the glycogen and, just work on that, what we call hormesis, that stress, that good stress.
Good stress, yeah.
Yes. All right. And then the reason we want to do this is because exercise raises some of these things that we didn't really get to talk about very much in the first time we talked about this, but NAD, my favorite new molecule.
Which takes us back to the mitochondria book,
Yes,
right?
it does. Nicotinic adenosine mononucleotide is what that stands for, something like that. Or dinucleotide, excuse me. And I may have gotten that wrong. You'll have to check me. But anywho, it raises the NAD.
I want to go with what you said.
Okay, and the NAD is like,
Eleanor.
it is so critical. It's a little carrier molecule for hydrogen ions in all of these metabolic pathways. And you got to have this molecule or things don't work right. So your exercise is going to raise that, which is good for you. It's going to turn on your AMPK, which I know you all are excited about that one, right?
Sure.
Which restores mitochondria activity.
There you go. And then it's going to inhibit your mTOR. All right?
Right.
Okay. That's going to let autophagy do its thing. So what we're going to do here is maybe 15 minutes a day.
And I mean, get a dog because
there you go.
My dog always wants me to play with her, so I just chase her around my living room until I get out of breath a little bit. I'm like, look, I got my activity in.
There's a woman in my networking group, and I know if you're listening, you know who you are. She says, whenever I take a phone call, I walk.
Perfect.
She gets her phone up, and she is on the floor walking, and she's on the phone a lot. So she's very fit.
I think taking a couple trips up and down the stairs is also very effective.
Yeah, so intensity. That gets you the intensity. Intensity does matter. You can't just move. You got to push it a little bit.
Well, I would say any movement counts, but if you're starting
Not for this.
I know, but if you're starting from 0, just get up and move.
Yeah.
And then work your way up to the intensity if you want to get into the longevity factor of it.
Yeah, the
right?
vitality.
The vitality.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And then the next and last thing that we're going to do today. Oh, no, yeah, that's right. We got 2 things we're going to do. We're going to shock ourselves with some temperature. So how many of y'all take cold showers? Oh, it's so much fun. You got to take a cold shower.
So does it count if I take a warm shower and then end it with
Yes.
several seconds of cold water? Because that's
Yes.
invigorating.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. That's what we need to be doing. I want an outside shower because every time I go to the beach, they have outside showers and they're always cold. And I'm down there going, oh, I'm outside. This is so much fun. Well, I can't get anybody to bill me when I think they're afraid they might see me and it would be too shocking.
Oh,
anyway.
Eleanor.
But anyway.
I doubt very much. That's
I know. It's a pretty story. Okay. Well, anyway, so we want that cold shock because it switches on those sirtuin genes that I was talking about that make those very important proteins that work on the DNA and protect it.
Those are the caretaker genes.
The caretakers, yes.
Okay.
And it's going to extend the length of your telomeres, which we read about. If you have longer telomeres, that's a good thing for you, and that's the end of your chromosomes. And we can measure them. And it's going to package those ends, and it's going to protect them and take care of them so that they can unwind and wind and unwind and make all the things that the DNA codes for.
All from a cold shower.
All from cold shower. But you also can keep your thermostats low or move to Boston like David Sinclair. He came from Australia, and he said those winters in Boston were terribly cold, but he's learned to enjoy them and go outside and take that brisk walk outside. Those of us in the warmer climates have a little more trouble with this, so maybe the cold swimming pools. But Mel Robbins, I saw her get into one of these barrels full of ice, and I know that's what she's doing. Now, the reason we want to do this, y'all, this is so much fun. We have fat, and Tim, you're always talking about how much fat you've got, right?
Yep.
All right, well, you have lots of, that's called adipose tissue, and you have white or yellow fat, and you have brown fat. And the brown fat is the thermogenic fat, and that's the one that this cold stuff is working on, and it's mitochondrial rich. And there's a gene in there, the UCP2 gene. Oh, we know so many genes that I never wanted to know about. But anyway, the more brown fat you have, the better your longevity genes are going to be.
Interesting.
And like you said, it is refreshing and vitalizing. You go, woo, this is good. So, all right, so we're going to restrict our calories. We're
Just
going,
a little, yep.
Then what was
intermittent fasting.
And then we're going to watch the proteins that we're getting, from what sources and how much of them. We're going to get these cold shocks, and then we're going to limit our exposure to synthetic chemicals, is what I would say. Avoid the plastics. Be conscious of these chemical contacts that you've got because they can be very toxic to the cell. So those were things that we could do. Oh, radiation. Now, there's an interesting idea. When I go to the dentist, they used to say, do you want an x-ray? They don't ask me anymore.
Oh, yeah, there's not an option to not.
Yes, there is. And you can tell them.
They don't give it to you.
You can say, no, not really. I don't think I need that. I don't think my teeth have moved that much in the last 6 months. But, occasionally, perhaps that's a good idea. But when you start looking at how many places you get the opportunity to be zapped by radiation, it can be interesting. And there is a lifetime dose on radiation exposure that very few people are informed of. So it is something to pay attention to, in my estimation. David Sinclair talks about this at the end of the book. He says, yeah, and I travel a lot. So every time I'm going through the airport, I get zapped. I get zapped. So he now requests to be patted down. He gets that frequent flyer thing that you can avoid the lines and you can go over and get in quickly. Mm-hmm. So even he's writing this book, right? So he says avoid radiation when you can. So
those are the 4 or 5 things that he says we can do to affect our biological age.
I think so, and we can do them today. These are things, we could take some supplements.
Yeah, does he have a tie to some supplements? Did you look into that?
I know. He's on the board of a lot of companies, startup companies all over the place, but he has a disclaimer in here that he does not promote any brand of supplements. But he does take supplements. He takes resveratrol, which is something here in the Carolinas we know about because there's a wine industry, and there was a lot of leftover pulp and things, and some docs over here said, hey, let's look at the compounds in here, and they started making a product, Nature's something or other. Remember that?
Nature's Own.
Nature's Own? Yeah, which is a resveratrol tonic, I believe. But there are many other companies making resveratrol products, and they are one of his favorite supplements because they work at the sirtuin level.
Can we talk about his interesting recommendation to eat stressed out plants?
Yes, because they has resveratrol in them.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a polyphenol.
Yes, it is.
Which is something that helps that plant survive under stress and that we can benefit from by eating it. So wine is often from stressed grapes.
And so, Tim, we're going to be drinking Pinot Noir, and I know you're not excited about that, but that's the recommendation.
Because it comes from the most stressed grapes.
Yeah, and I like Pinot Noir, so I'm okay.
I don't mind, though. Just not my favorite.
Well, maybe we can develop a taste because
I'm
it
a
would be
Merlot kind of guy.
Well,
I'm having a red.
Shift it over.
Red
Just
wine
give it a
gives
shot.
me headaches, so
Yeah.
I'll have to eat my grapes.
Well, that's the nitrites in there, so maybe you have to get one that doesn't have that in it.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so yes, resveratrol is a stress thing that you can get in some plants. Yes.
I can't remember what else he was saying about the stressed plants, but it was just a funny way to say it. We got to eat stressed out plants.
Yeah, and you think about your garden and you go, I don't want that droopy looking thing that looks like it's stressed. I want the plump one. Okay, he takes NAD.
But can I?
Yep.
But that is a one reason to maybe, if your budget can afford it, to go for organic, because organic produce has to work harder to fight off the pests and such, because it doesn't have the help of the chemical substances that a lot of people
Good
will
idea.
use. So
Excellent. Yeah, so eat organic when you can.
when you can, yeah.
And that is a recommendation from a lot of people. So he takes resveratrol. He takes a compound called NAD. It is a product of niacin, which is our B3 vitamins. He says the B3 vitamins are not as effective as NAD itself. It's a fuel for the sirtuin, and it will, with more levels of that, you have a decrease, or when you get older, you have less NAD, is what he's saying, so you need to supplement it. Gotcha. And he's calling 40 old. You know, that's when you need to start the supplements.
Ouch.
Yeah, then he takes, he says there's a nicotinamide riboside, NR, that boosts not only the sirtuin 2 gene and NAD, but his most favorite supplement is something called NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, and it's found in avocados, broccoli, cabbage, and it protects against kidney damage, neurodegenerative diseases, and mitochondrial breakup. So those are the things that he says. If you want to do something today, do those daily practices and supplement. But he's not recommending anything. He does not recommend anything. But that's what he does.
He's says, not recommending it. He's just sharing what he's doing.
He says, I do take supplements, and this is why, this is the theory behind it. So, anything else about the section here on the present?
No, I think that is good for now.
Okay, well, I think we should take a break, catch our exercise break, go make sure we do all those things we said we were going to do, and get together and talk about the future, what he's predicting for the future in our next chat.
All right, we'll talk about lifespan a little bit more on the next podcast. Until then, have a great day, guys.
Well, I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm Eleanor at 360health4u.com, and I would love to talk to you about some of these supplement ideas and lifestyle changes. So reach out to me at 360health4u.com.
And I am Kristen Norton, one of the 3 registered dietitians at wellbalancednutrition.com. We invite you to check out our website, wellbalancednutrition.com, and see some of our blogs, our free monthly workshop, and sign up for a free clarity call to see if nutrition and wellness coaching is right for you. Sorry, I almost forgot that. Have a great day.
The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.